Hey, everybody, welcome back to a brand new episode of the Hemmings Hot Rod Barbecue Podcast. On this episode, we have the one and the only Rory Carroll, a man of mystical automotive talent. That's right, I said it.
Oh, yeah.
And the editor-in-chief of Jalopnik. How you doing, bud?
Good, man. Good enough. How are you? How's the earliest part of the summer going?
It's not bad. A little overcast out today in the 70s, which is perfect that's what I like.
Yeah.
No humidity, but where are you guys at?
We are like day 12 of a super intense heat wave, no rain, no clouds. It's been nice, but we're like, as frequent listeners know, we're still in the middle of the house project, so it's a little bit intense right now, but it's good. It's good. We doing a lot of wrenching. We had a lot of interesting cars in the lift lately and in and out of the garage, so I'm happy. I'm surviving.
Good. Well, that's first and foremost the most important. So I want to ask you about that because I'm going through this whole lift thing in my shop right now. Okay.
Yes.
How much of a difference, or does it make having a lift in your garage?
It is. Well, one part of it, you do gain a lot of friends. There's like people who you have not talked to in a long time, like coming out of the woodwork to hang out all of a sudden. But it is like night and day. I mean, I've been working on cars since I was 16-ish. So what is that? 20 some years. And I got a lift 2 years ago, and it like, the amount of stuff that you don't put off because it's like, oh, I don't want to crawl underneath this thing, or I don't want to jack it up or whatever. It is an absolute game changer as far as like,
it is.
And like, just everything is so much easier and everything is so much faster, and like you can see, and like it is like one of those things where it's like, I certainly couldn't have done it when I was younger, just money wise, but like, you think back of all the times you were under some shady jack stand and like
story of my life.
And, I was telling somebody the other night a story where I came home from the bar and my neighbor was trying to remove a brake caliper from his Tahoe, and I crawled under there, and it was on like an incline, and I wrenched this way and knocked the car off the jack stand, and the brake rotor came across my face and onto the ground, like behind me.
No.
It was like a true like like a movie, just like watching your life flash before your eyes. The car rolled all the way down the driveway into the street, and it was like, could have been the end. So I have fewer of those experiences, which is very good. But yeah, if you were to judge it purely on the progress that I've made on my own project cars, I would say maybe not a great investment, but man, I'm fixing everybody else's stuff. So
it's like having a pickup truck, dude. If they know you have it, they're gonna flock to you.
We've got a pickup truck too now, but yeah, but it's also like there's a level of sympathy too. You got a buddy and he's like, I got to do whatever, I got to do brakes or whatever, and it's like, bring it over.
All right.
Like, I don't need to think about you sweating on the asphalt. We'll take care of it. So, it's been huge, and it like I would say, have it installed. I am a DIYer, and like, pretty much every respect. Like I don't like to have someone in my shop, but at least in this case, it was like $500, and I know it's done right, and it like I know it's not like binding, or you know what I mean. Like it was well worth the money. It was funny though, because it was like, when I was looking at this house in this shop, I had my wife kind of distract the realtor so I could come out here and drill holes in the floor to make sure that there was enough concrete, and there was. But I ended up hearing from, I hired the guys to come over, and I was like, what's the minimum depth? And they were like, oh, it's supposed to be it's supposed to be 3 inches or 4 inches, but as long as the concrete's not all cracked up, it's usually fine. I was like, excuse me? Like, it's usually fine? Like, it's not really my understanding of how.
Yeah, usually when you got a 3,000-pound automobile or a 4,000-pound automobile up in the air, usually isn't the best phrase to say.
Yeah, I would prefer it to be like 100% guaranteed versus usually fine.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah. Can we do that?
You'll probably be okay. It's like, well, I don't know how I feel about that.
I'm not your lawyer, buddy, but you shouldn't say that to people. So. But yeah, it's been awesome. Like, again, it's like learning how to weld. It's like doing like any additional like skill or like tool that you get in your quiver. It's just like, oh shit. I'm a different person now. You know what I mean? Like I have so much, like I look at everything differently. So yeah. It'll be good. I can't wait. I can't wait to bring a shit box over to your place and put it up there.
Dude, I'm at that point where 1, it's for storage. 2, it's I just need to be able to get under. I like I said, I'm 51 years old, bro. So like me climbing under shit, not okay. Yeah. And like I still try to take care of myself, but you still like I come back in from the garage, and my wife looks at me and she's like, "Did you really again with the moans and the sounds and the noises?" And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you,
Yeah. It's not again, it's like the amount of stuff that you're like, oh, I'll just take care of it. Like, oh yeah, just throw up and lift. It's like I did, because I have so many non-running cars, I did bolt I sunk 2 threaded holes into the floor of the garage so I can mount a winch on the floor, which is a super pro tip for having a lift. That way, you're not rolling stuff or trying to like, you can just hook it up off the trailer and drag it in,
that's smart.
Yeah. That was, one of those things where you're sitting there in the shop late at night drinking a beer and you're like, what am I going to do? I'm going to solve this problem for myself.
See, beer sometimes is the answer to a lot of things.
The Homer Simpson, it's the cause of and solution to all my problems. Yeah,
absolutely. So, dude, let me ask. So, back at Jalopnik now, right?
Yeah.
Jalopnik forever, the quintessential best news source on the internet for just fun stuff, for industry news, for everything else. How's it going over there, dude? Because the site looks amazing. The information's fantastic.
It's good. There's probably another kind of redesign coming in the next few weeks. But it's great. I mean, the group of people that we have there, are all people that I hired kind of last go around. And Bob Surakanich, who was there when I was at RM for the year, did a fantastic job. I mean, it's kind of like having sold a car and then someone did a whole bunch of work fixing stuff to it, and then like you get it back and it's like, oh wow, this is way nicer.
This is nice.
Like, everything works. This is incredible.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really good to be back. And I think like more than anything, I think like EIC at Jalopnik is a very fun job. And it's like, I mean, it is a job. Like there's stressors that come with it. There's easy parts and hard parts, but it's like, again, overall, it is probably for my buck, the best, most fun job in automotive media. You get to do stuff that you just could not do anywhere else, and you get to say stuff that nobody else can say. So, super happy to be back, and it's been fun, and like it's great to get kind of reacquainted with the old staff, and it's good. It's really fun. So I'm super stoked. Yeah.
All right. Well, based on that, let's talk about some of the stuff that you guys are talking about and that the automotive world is talking about, right? So, I want to hit the Mission X, the Porsche Mission X concept. I want to talk about the new Lexus. I want to talk about the soft rotors like the Honda Trail, the Pilot Trail. So, let's start with the Mission X, right? Porsche came out with this concept, and they're touting it as, even though it's a concept, the sports car of the future. Right.
Yeah.
And we're talking about, ring lap records. We're talking about more downforce, more speed, basically more of anything, but no motor. Right. All electric.
Yeah.
So what is and drastically different style wise
Yeah.
from
I mean,
just
that
about
was,
everything.
That was the most exciting thing. Like the interior in that car is bananas.
Amazing.
It's like,
Yeah.
you know, somebody at Porsche has been looking at the stuff Singer has been turning out and saying like, hey, we could do that. You know, like
Right.
given the right price point, we could deliver on that. But
Yep.
it is gorgeous. I mean, I think like, you know, now we're getting into like what the meat of the EV thing is, right? You know, it's like everybody for the last decade or so has been kind of trying to figure out how to do these things. And you know, Porsche has a very competent car in the Taycan, but it's like, you know, the kind of peak of their performance, you know, tip of the spear is still internal combustion,
Right.
you know, GT3 RS type stuff. And
Right.
this is like, you know, this is like Porsche, I think, kind of being comfortable with an EV and being
Yeah.
comfortable like we are able to deliver a good product, and let's start, you know, this is going to be the tip of the spear performance wise for them, and price wise and interior wise. I mean, like design wise, I think like, you know, that's if it gets built, which kind of has to. I mean, I think like
it'll show up. Yeah, it'll show up.
And it's like, you know, if you're a Porsche board member, you have to look at the excitement around the car and think like, boy, we could charge just about anything for this thing, and it would sell out
that's
tomorrow.
the thing.
Yeah.
And they can. That's the and I feel like more than any other manufacturer, right? Porsche can do that and get away with it. And no one's even going to question it. Yeah, no one's going to say, well, I wonder if it's good. Right?
It's going to be great.
You know, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah. And that's they're in a good position there. And I think like the time is kind of right to do that with an EV. I mean, I think like technologically that would be tough 2 years ago, 5 years ago for Porsche to pull off. Like, you know, is it going to deliver on the range? Is it going to deliver on performance? Yada, yada. It's like the pieces are there now. And again, it's like at this point you kind of have like, you can't leave that money on the table if you're Porsche. So I'm excited for it. I hope they let me drive it. Give me a long term or yada yada, all that stuff. But yeah, it looks awesome. It looks a lot like that. There was a Brabham kind of reboot Brabham. It's very like 60s silhouette car, 60s 70s silhouette car, where it's like Can-Am, you know, like bulges everywhere and like really aggressive flares, and gonna be cool. I was very, very excited. And like that too, you know, most of the time as like a Lada owner, I have to like second guess my taste. You know, it's like I think something's cool, but it doesn't necessarily mean that anyone else think it's cool. So but we put that up on the site yesterday and it was gangbusters all afternoon. So people are excited about it.
Okay. So why do you think Porsche is going to be able to get away, especially, you know, it's obviously concept. Why are they going to get away with the yoke as opposed to the
the Tesla's thing with the yoke, very typical Tesla, is not that it's like inherently a dumb idea. It's because like some race cars use that square shaped wheel, but the thing is the ratio is lock to lock like this. So you're not rotating it like this. With Tesla, they were like, oh, that's a cool shape, we should make our steering wheel that shape. But nobody there knows anything about cars. So they were like, oh yeah, we'll just bolt it to the regular steering rack.
It'll be fine.
And someone's going to have to try to like wrestle this thing around like that. If someone had taken 30 seconds to think about it, they could go on Jegs or any of the like performance to buy a steering quickener and throw it on there. Like you could have figured this out, but
just take that extra 5 minutes to give a shit.
But good for them. They are seemingly kind of immune to those types of problems. So you know, I can make fun of them all I want, but they're still going to be the most highly valued car company in the universe. So.
Still killing it. So, well, I think that's going to be interesting to see what they do. And I mean, if anybody is going to knock the EV, you know, from a hypercar perspective out of the park, it will be Porsche. And I think that it's, you know, when you it's like I always tell people, I'm like, if you want a sports car and you have some means, just buy a Porsche and don't question. That's it. Just go buy one. You know,
it's like an icon.
Yeah.
I think that the interesting thing too is like, you know, I generally speaking say I'm one of those people who like misses, like, even in a very high performance electric car, I do miss the experience of the engine and the smell and yada yada.
Oh, yeah.
I think in the case of a hypercar though, like the top end of performance is always, for me, it's like, what would make this car the fastest? Like, what would make this car perform the best? You know what I mean? Like, it's not really a driving experience thing. Like, like the Bugatti Chiron is not about like the driving experience. It's about being the fastest thing on the road.
Right.
And it's like, there are other cars that are more fun to drive, but like, that's not the point. And like, so I think hypercar is a really good spot to kind of, where like everything's going to be automatic transmission anyway. Everything's going to be, tires this wide or wider anyway. So it's like, you don't really, there's not like a driving experience to be lost. It's like absolute speed. What is the fastest way we can make this car? And like, if that's EV, that's EV, which I think is cool for me as an enthusiast. Like it makes more sense to me. Like when the GT3 goes electric, I'll be like, oh God, that's a bummer. But this, it's like, go nuts. How fast can you get this thing around the ring?
Yeah.
So
no, cool. I agree with you. I think it's gonna be pretty wild. So all right, now let's pivot and go a little off-road, right? So everybody now, obviously overlanding and bouncing off-road has been a thing forever. And then in the past 5-7 years or whatever the case is, everybody's like, now we're just gonna call off-roading overlanding because that sounds cooler, right? And we're gonna bolt shit to the top of our trucks.
Yeah,
and
we used to call it
we're gonna camp. Wheeling, camping. I mean, let's call it what it is. But now you've got luxury automakers that are just like, you know what, we're going to do this, right? Like Toyota with the new Tacoma, they've got their trail edition that is based on overlanding. And now we've got Lexus with the Overtrail that they just announced. So
the GX,
as a Lexus owner who does go off-roading with it, right? What's your take on this?
I mean, I'm excited. I think like, ultimately like 10 steps back, like this is kind of a way, in the case of like the small crossovers, it's a way to make them interesting in a way that they haven't been. I think like, the promise of the SUV going way back to like the dawn of the SUV is like, oh, here's a rugged vehicle that will take you where you want to go. It's hard to make that case with something like the Ford Escape or whatever. But with the kind of trail edition stuff they're doing, you get a little bit of that kind of rub off, like, as the middle manager who goes camping once a year, you get to have that kind of ruggedness. But like that GX, man, is fully legit. GX, I bought mine. People were just kind of starting to realize that like this car that was largely sold to like dentists and dentists' wives, like I literally bought mine from like an 80-year-old lady. Was just like it was a very comfortable four-wheel drive for people who think they need four-wheel drive, and like but underneath it was a Land Cruiser Prado with a V8,
right?
And like if you start cutting plastic off of them, they very quickly become like incredible off-roaders. And I think like Lexus never marketed that car really that way
as
in
an
the
off-roader.
States. And like they were kind of watching this happen over the last 4 to 5, 6 years, and watching people buy a GX460, a 5-year-old GX460, and cut the bumper off and put 33-inch tires on it, and then take it overlanding or off-roading or whatever. And they were like, oh shit, we could do that. Like, why don't we just sell it like that? And so this car, I mean, and I said it this morning, but it's like there are very few car launches that I go to or see where it's like 100% nailed it, no notes. Like this is it.
Really?
Like, and this is it. I mean, like, would I like to have a V8? Yeah, I mean, I'd like to have a manual transmission too, but that's probably not realistic.
We're old. That's
But it's like they're not going to do that. But it is I mean, tow's 8,000 pounds. It's got a stick rear axle. It's got a electronic locking rear diff.
Yep.
Still has the center locking diff. I mean, it is like, I look at my car, and for the type of off-roading that I do, which is like slow through the woods.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want a Ford Bronco. I don't want a Wrangler, because this car does all the stuff that those cars can do, mostly like 9/10 of it. And it's like, it's old, and I can throw my kids' stuff in the back of it, and I can like drive it through a narrow trail where it gets like super scratched up and beat up, and I don't feel bad. Like, I can drop it on rocks and I don't feel bad. But this is the first time that I've seen a new SUV come out where I'm like, kind of want that car. Like, it is. Yeah.
Okay. So to that point, do you think the people that are going to buy this thing, like the beauty of having an older SUV or an older 4x4, right? Like, I've got an old Grand Cherokee, and like, I beat that thing like it owes me money. I'll take it. I do not care. And there's a massive freedom in that, right? Where you just like, if you ding it or you do this, you're like, that's fine. Where one, we know this thing's not going to be cheap. We know this thing's going to be, I mean, there's no pricing, I don't think, announced yet, right?
Probably 60, 80 grand, I would guess.
Right. 60, 80 grand. I mean, how many of the 60, 80 grand people that buy this thing do you think are going to bomb it off road?
I mean, very few. But that's the case too with Land Rover, with every, spend 80 grand on a car, like very few people are going to use it in that way.
Right.
I mean, obviously, like, I bought my GX used. I bought, everybody I know who has a GX bought it used.
Right.
But I think like I hope there are people who are going to be doing that with the I forgot what the off-road edition is called. I mean, I hope people go out and use them, because it's an incredible
Overtrail?
platform. Overtrail, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's incredible what the car will do. I mean, a year ago, summer ago, or 2 summers ago, I took it a pretty intense trip with a bunch of like heavily modified Wranglers, and it is not as good as a Wrangler. I mean, it is not.
Yeah.
The Wrangler's like a Ferrari hypercar. Like, it is the best off-roader you can
purpose
buy,
built. Yeah.
But I did go all the places that they went. I did, like, I maybe took an easier route or whatever, but like, it's like a less risky route, but it does go everywhere. And like, it is, like I said, it's incredible. It's a Land Cruiser. It's a Land Cruiser Prado that, like, in other parts of the world is like a work truck that lives a very different life. So I hope people do buy them, and I hope people do at least explore some of that capability, because it's super fun. And man, it looks right on a trail.
It looks solid.
It looks right on a trail in a way that it'll never look right in a mall parking lot. You know what I mean? Like, so I hope people are using them. Probably won't. A lot of people probably won't, but it's amazing. I mean, it's like, it's amazing to look at Lexus with this truck and be like, man, Land Rover does not have an answer for this thing. Like, the other luxury, like Porsche does not have an answer. It's like, okay, maybe it's a G-Wagon is comparable to this. Like, it's a huge step for Lexus. And I think, like, from an enthusiast standpoint, like Toyota in general, I think has been very like active trying to add some kind of spirit to their portfolio and some heart to their portfolio. But man, people are super. This is another post that went up this morning, and people are all over this thing. Like, people are excited about it in a way that, like, people have not been excited about a Lexus since the LFA
in a long time. Like,
it's like, this is it's very, very cool. So I'm excited about it. Again, it's like maybe every 4 or 5 years a new car comes out, and I'm like, oh boy, I'd really like that. It's like Blackwing. This. It's like, those are like,
that's good.
Yeah. So it's going to be cool. But the software, I just gave back a Honda Pilot Trail Sport, which is like,
okay. So now we're going to the other end of the spectrum. We're going to like purpose built, really off-road or factory off-roader, to a somewhat, you had said soft roader, which is, I think, such a brilliant phrase for this, right?
But and it's like, this trend has been like you have the Subaru Wilderness Edition, which is like a little bit more ground clearance, more cladding.
Yeah.
This is like, again, this is a way for automakers to kind of butch up their small crossover lineups.
Yeah.
But I did like some very moderate off-roading yesterday. And I think for people who think of themselves as outdoorsy, I think like these are kind of the move, these little small crossovers with a little bit more ground clearance, a better tire, some cladding to keep you from damaging the paint. Like I actually think like this is what most of those people should buy. I think like up here, there's a lot of kind of granola, weekend kayaker, mountain biker types, and it's like, it actually makes way more sense than something like a GX, where it's like you are never going to approach the limits of that's off-road capability. Like I'm never going to do that.
Right.
And it's like, for that capability, because you have stick axle, you have extra weight, you have a big motor, and yada yada. Like my car now with everything on it is like 12, maybe 13 miles per gallon. And it's like,
that's a lot of weight.
It is. It's a lot of weight, but it's also like, again, like you have all that muscle, and like really even up here, like where I live in Northern Michigan, you have to go out of your way to find a challenging trail for that car.
Right.
And like, and really there's nothing that is like challenging. Like you have to go to the Upper Peninsula or go like, you really have to go looking, I guess.
Yeah.
And so like that Pilot would do all of the off-roading that I do. It's with the exception of like stupid stuff where it's like, oh, I wonder if I can get to that mud puddle. Obviously I wouldn't do that in the Pilot, but it'll do everything else. And like I think I turned it in this morning, and I think the fuel economy thing was like at 19 miles per gallon. It's like,
you see, man. Listen, dude, you're talking to somebody with 3 SUVs. Okay.
Yeah.
None of which get over really 15 miles to the gallon. Like I have one that gets 8, another one that gets 11. And on its best day, I've got one that gets 16. Okay. Yeah. So that does hurt. There's no question about it. Yeah. I think that and I think to your point, by combining that kind of extra ruggedness to an extent, right, where those kayakers and mountain bikers can get to the road less traveled, but they're not rock crawling. They are not going through 4-foot, mud puddles or mud bogs or anything like that. I agree. I think these are really nice alternatives that also add that I'm sure they're very comfortable with all the technology.
Oh, God. Right. Yeah.
And, if you're pulling 16, 18, 20 miles to the gallon out of one of these, that's a massive win.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, we drove it down to the Detroit Grand Prix last weekend, and it's like, it's got a usable third row. It's got like cargo room, and it like, it's easy to park and all that stuff. It's like, I think unless you're to drive a real off-roader, you are making sacrifices. Like you're giving up a little bit of comfort. You're giving up fuel economy, kind of parkability. You're giving stuff up. Like my Lexus is like, it's all jacked up, and it's got like weird bumpers on it, and like I look kind of foolish at the drop-off line sometimes, I feel like, but you're making sacrifices to do that. And I do that because like I want to go on the hard trails. I want to go like find stuff. But if you're like looking to pull a sailboat or like put a couple of kayaks on the roof and like get to
why
the
not?
Trailhead, it's like, and it's like peace of mind where it's like, of most of the off-roading up here, like that kind of stuff where you're like trying to get somewhere, I could do it in my wife's GTI. Like I could do it in my 911. And like I used to do it in my 911. But it's sometimes a little scary to do that. Like, it's like, oh boy, I don't know about this. But like that Pilot is like, I can't think of a trail up here again where I would be trying to get somewhere that I would feel like a second hesitation. You know what I mean? So it's like that peace of mind where it's like, I'm not going to get stuck out here with no cell service and have to sleep in my car. Like,
well, dude, the technology part of it is nice. Like I look at, like you've got the Lexus, I daily my 96 Bronco, right? And I look at that truck, and that is just a big blunt instrument that does nothing well. but
yeah.
Like it's actually a billy goat off road, right? It's got a limited slip in the back. I put manual locking worn hubs on it. It's shocking how good that big thing is. And it's actually wide. It's not that big. It actually has the same wheelbase as a Toyota Camry, which is kind of hilarious. But there's that. Yeah. There is that massive sacrifice. Like your fuel economy sucks. You don't have the technology. You really don't have the comfort. And I had honestly, I had a new Grand Cherokee, a two-row Grand Cherokee. And I was like, man, this is just nice. Yeah. Like it's just, it was comfortable. It's nice, infinitely more capable than my old Bronco would ever be, right? Because of the tech. And aside from what I'll call just kind of a lack of cool factor and personality.
Yeah, totally.
You kind of look at it and you go, this is probably a better way to go.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it's certainly more rational. And I think like too, from a, environmental standpoint, like I would rather have people driving a Pilot if they feel like they need to go off road than a GX or whatever. So like, it's like, am I ever going to buy a Honda Pilot? No, I'm too stupid to buy a Honda Pilot. Like I'm not a rational, smart person
would do that.
Buy a car like a Honda Pilot, but I'm way too dumb. And I know that about myself. And it's just like, I'm going to continue driving, a car with a huge lift and KO2s on it.
See, this is why we're friends.
Yeah. We know. Yeah. Fundamentally, there's something wrong with us.
We're flawed.
We don't make good decisions. And that's just part of the deal. But yeah, I dug it. I was impressed. And I think like it really did kind of put those cars in a different light for me, where it was like, oh, okay. Like I get who this is for. And I get like, it's not a total, there certainly were like cars in the past that were like an off-road appearance package where it's like, that's just a waste. Like, don't do that.
Yes.
But like,
correct.
The new, Kia Seltos and like the wilderness package. Like those cars will, unless you're looking for trouble, will get you where you need to go. And like for 90% of off-road, like I'll go traipsing around in the woods in the GX and I'll see, a line of 8 built Wranglers and Broncos with 37s and like, and it's like, man, you are on a dirt road. Like,
you don't need that.
Yeah, like I could ride a motorcycle, a sport bike back here. I could I could drive a new 911 back here. You'd be fine. And it's like, for the type of off-roading that is even really available to most people, like unless you live up in the mountains or live, in Moab or whatever, like it's fine. And I do too. Like I had the car for a week. I wish I would have taken it to a very serious off-road park and like seeing like, how far does this go? You know what I mean? Like, got off-road tires.
But the fact that you were even considered that, right? And that you had driven it for a week and that you did do some light off-roading with it. The fact that you wanted to push it a little bit more, I think it says a lot about the confidence that you had in it right out of the gate, which is nice. So
I think, it's like, I think it would guarantee you it'll do more than I expected it to do.
Yeah.
And
what was the price point?
That's a good question. I think it was around 40, let's say 45. I'll have to look that up. But
that's not bad.
No. And it's like, again, gas mileage, it looks cool. Like it had this cool kind of like battleship gray paint and like blacked out grill and like, kids loved it. And one cool thing too, it has CarPlay, which I obviously don't have in any of my personal cars. But you can now run Onyx Off-Road, which is like a fantastic off-road app that'll show you like trails. So you can run Onyx through CarPlay on the center.
That's cool.
Stack, which is awesome. Yeah, it was like, one of those things. Like I'm jokingly, not so jokingly, pretty anti-technology, and like I don't want a screen in my car generally.
Yeah.
But I was like, it's kind of cool. Like,
dude, listen, I'll be honest. And I kind of broke down with that. Like when I got my Bronco, the only really, aside from bigger wheels or bigger tires. The only thing that I really did to it, I put a flip up Pioneer stereo with CarPlay in it because when you drive, I think as much as we do, and I go everywhere in that stupid thing, it's nice to have. And I've got my satellite radio, and like I don't care about the other technology. Like that, like I don't ever want a screen as opposed to analog gauges, right? I always want buttons. I always want switches. I always want touch points that when I do something, I feel like I did it as opposed to, did it work? Right.
Yeah. Or like I'm going through menus.
Yeah. I don't want menus. I want this does this when I push it. That's what I want. I am an automotive Neanderthal, and I'm totally fine with that.
However,
right? Like some things are okay.
Make some concessions. Yeah.
I'll
make some
just
concessions.
Like one.
Yeah. That was another thing too. Like Honda's UX now is very like button driven. Which is very funny to see. Like I drove a TRD Tundra, a lot of buttons and rockers and switches. The GX, the new GX has like in the press release about the car, they make sure to be like, you can control AC and volume with a switch or a lever or a toggle or whatever.
But that feels rugged, right? Like toggle switches.
Totally.
That feels rugged. Like I want to flip shit and like click and have a light go on. Like it's just
like a bomber. Yeah. That's like the F-150 I had has the dual tanks, which are like
I love that.
Hilarious. Yeah,
dude.
But like going down the freeway and like seeing that hit the E and then being like floop.
Is there anything?
The auxiliary tank? So cool.
My old F-150 had that. And is there anything more fulfilling?
No, it's like being a bomber pilot in World War II.
Right?
Like,
while you're cruising at 75 and you just refill on the fly.
And you watch that gauge.
You watch it go up, dude. Yeah. That is, I would love for a manufacturer to do that again, because I really wish my Bronco had dual tanks like an F-150. Yeah. Because it is such a, it's just, I don't know. It's just, it was just cool.
There's a company, and I'm going to forget their name, but they build tanks, like 130 gallon tanks for GXs and for like off-roaders. Like if you're a real overland trip and you're going to be on the woods for a month, but those things are like, again, like, aluminum, and they look so rad. Like it's just like, man, what use do I have for this? No use for it whatsoever.
Right.
Do I want it? Absolutely.
Yes. 100%.
Like, do I want to just be standing at the pump watching that thing hit $1,000?
Yeah, no.
Worth of gas? Probably not.
No.
Probably.
But
not smart.
You flip that switch.
It'd be cool, man. Just
dude, it's so funny. It's like as we go through, and I think when you've been in the industry and been driving as long as we have, and you get to experience all these different things, there are tiny little things on certain vehicles that just stand out in your mind.
Oh yeah.
That leave that impression, and you're like, God, I wish this had this, or I really wish I could incorporate that into a build or something like that. And most of them are just stuff that makes me giggle. It's not. It has nothing really to do with efficiency. It's just
just someone
it makes me smile.
Fun. Somebody was having a good time. And I like the other thing to remember about the car business that I always think about is every cool, fun feature that you love on a car, there was somebody with a red pen saying, we don't need to do this.
No.
This is a waste of money. And like, it's not going to move any more units. And like the amount of, especially like, car that comes to mind immediately is the Blackwing, where it's like the fight that they had to undertake
that thing made.
to get it made, and then get a manual, and then get like all the stuff, like you really, it's easy to be kind of cynical about the car because it is a business. And there are very cynical people in the car business, but there are also some like real enthusiasts who who will
they bleed it.
And go to the mat and like risk their job to like make fun shit happen for us, which is like, it's I always like, again, that Blackwing, talking to those engineers and like the like degree to which they had to like, like the manual transmission won't pencil because we have to make a special AC tunnel to get AC around it, and they were like, okay, maybe we'll 3D print one. And it was like, it's like, we'll figure it out, like, and like that kind of stuff. And like that GX, like it would have been so easy for Lexus to build that GX on a crossover platform, and make it look bulky and put some plastic cladding on it and be like, here it is, here's the new GX, and everybody would have cried. But
they didn't.
Somebody was like, no, this is what these are for,
and look at the result, right?
Yeah,
People they're talking about it now, just like the Blackwing. In 15-20 years they're still going to be talking about it. And that's when you get all the people that went to the mat in 20 years, long after they're retired, they just go, I had something to do with that, which is that's just always cool, man. Yeah, totally. And it's what makes the business fun, and it's like really what keeps me kind of interested in it. Like I said, you and I have both been doing this for a long time at this point, and like it can feel like it's daunting.
Like, it's less fun, or like less fun stuff is happening, but like there's always somebody out there willing to kind of risk it all to put a stupid smile on our faces. So
hey man, that's what we live for, which is outstanding. So dude, what else is going on at Jalopnik? What do you got coming up at the garage? What else is happening? Well,
I've still I think last time we talked, I ran through the Lotta project.
Yep, I see the Lotta behind you.
Yep, and I have a motor in here somewhere on a stand. I'm waiting for parts from K-Power. They're a company out of Illinois who's thankfully figured out the whole mating a K24 to a Subaru transmission and subframe. So they like the availability of those parts kind of like made the very stupid parts of the project, like put the Honda motor and the Subaru chassis on a lot of body possible. So they have an oil pan that kind of sits around the subframe. They have a bunch of different internal parts that are going to make a little bit more power and more reliably, and then a couple other like engine mount type things that so it's funny because like I initially was like, oh, I'll just buy the complete Honda to BRZ swap kit, and then I was like, oh, actually I don't have any of that stuff on the car. Like a lot of the stuff that's in that kit is totally irrelevant because I don't actually have a BRZ. I have like a little BRZ. It's like,
you have an eighth of a BRZ.
It's like so I have part of that too was like, oh, this kit plugs right into the BRZ ECU, and I was like, oh, I don't have an ECU at all. I don't have any electronics in this car.
Wait a minute, there are no computers in this.
There's literally no wire in the car right now. So
I'm
gonna have to figure that out. I think I'll have an expensive conversation with the Hall Tech guys about how to make that operate. But so that waiting on a couple parts. I've started stripping out weather stripping, which I was not going to do. Started painting the interior, which I was not going to do. But now that like the new stuff is in it, it's starting to look nice, and it's like
snowball, man.
Gotta do it. It's mission creep. And then got a bunch of my own. I got the 911 is like right there. I have a no spark issue that I cannot track down. Just haven't had time. And then got the Willys out in the barn, need some attention, and I'm using that F-150 right now. We had a bunch of pines planted on the property. Since it's been so dry, I have had to water them individually. So I have like, those tanks, the like totes. They're like 275 gallon totes. They're called IBC totes.
Yeah, sure. So got one of those in the back of the truck.
I got a few of those. And like driving around, those things weigh like I want to say like maybe 3,000 pounds or something like that when they're full. They're very big.
What's the payload in that baby?
Less, probably more than that. So it's fine. It's like the payload I think is like half that, but it's like if I end up breaking
if you're just limping, you're not doing 80 miles an hour. You're fine.
No. So been doing that, and then trying to kind of have a summer. We have a little sailboat now. Just a piece of shit that I bought for like $2,500, which is awesome. Perfect. It's like the off-road thing where it's like the kind of sailboat that you want to buy is like one where something goes wrong. You're like, All right.
Yeah. See you at the bottom. As long as we get back to shore, we're good.
Yeah. But yeah, that, and then, Jalopnik is great. It's getting into kind of our busy summer season, a lot of travel and going to, getting to reveals and drives and all that stuff season. So, it's good. It's good to be back. And like I said, I love the staff that we have, and, they're just so smart and funny and like, get it. They get it on a level, so you, again, working this business a long time. Sometimes you go work at a place and there are like two guys on the staff and you're like, why are you here? You don't seem to like cars at all. Like you don't seem to care about this in any way. And that's not the case here. It's like everybody has their own little perversions, which is very fun. Yeah.
Nice.
Good. Yeah.
Well, dude, I mean, we're coming off. That was a quick hour. Jesus.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Friggin' Blaze, bro. That was a fast one. It was a fast one. So, dude, where Jalopnik aside, where can they follow the Rory story about the lot, about the 911, about,
So I'm on Instagram and Twitter only, I think, at Rory_Carroll. So I'm posting a lot of updates when I have them, and then posting, my own work and our staff's work too. So drop me a follow if you can, or if not, if you're not into it, it's fine. It's mostly car stuff though. So
very cool. Well, dude, I mean, you've got a cool collection, guys. If everybody out there or anyone is looking for used stuff, obviously check out the Hemmings marketplace. We've got we have 25,000 cars on there, plus the auction, plus the make offer stuff. We got stuff.
Speaking of perverts, there's some real sickos on that site. It's good.
Dude, it's hard.
Great stuff. Yeah.
It's a wonderful place to work, but a painful place to shop at times. Because I'm like, oh man, this is gonna hurt. But otherwise, dude, thank you so much for coming on. As always, it's just always great to have you and BS a little bit about cars and what's going on in the industry. And I don't know, we'll check in again soon and have you back on. And I want updates on the Lotta and on the Willys and on the 911.
Yeah. Hopefully, I'll have to make sure to have some updates by the time we talk next time. Actually get some work done. But thanks for having me. Always a good time. Good shooting the shit and good catching up a little bit. And we'll talk soon.
Sounds good. All right, everybody. Thanks again for joining. We'll see you later. Thanks for listening, folks. And again, please subscribe to the Hot Rod Barbecue podcast. If you're on Spotify, check us out there. Subscribe to it on iTunes. And if you are going to go to YouTube, make sure you go to the Hot Rod Barbecue podcast and hit that subscribe button. And we'll come to you every week.